Tybalt here slain, whom Romeo's hand did slay. Romeo, that spoke him fair, bade him bethink how nice the quarrel was, and urged withal your high displeasure. All this uttered with gentle breath, calm look, knees humbly bowed, could not take truce with the unruly spleen of Tybalt deaf to peace, but that he tilts with piercing steel at bold Mercutio's breast, who all is hot, turns deadly point to point, and with a martial scorn, with one hand beats cold death aside, and with the other sends it back to Tybalt, whose dexterity retorts it. Romeo, he cries aloud, hold friends, friends part. And swifter than his tongue, his agile arm beats down their fatal points, and twixt them rushes, underneath whose arm an envious thrust from Tybalt hit the life of stout Mercutio. And then Tybalt fled. But by and by comes back to Romeo, who had but newly entertained revenge. And to it they go like lightning, for ere I could draw to part them, was stout Tybalt slain. And as he fell, did Romeo turn and fly. This is the truth. Or let Benvolio die. Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Mercado Owen. I am a local theater artist, and today I am here to kind of walk you through what my process is as an actor whenever I'm working on a monologue for class or for an audition. So first things first, you need to find a monologue. The first thing I recommend is read as many plays as you can. If you don't like reading plays, well, I'm sorry, you picked the wrong profession, because you need to be constantly reading plays. It is your job as an actor to constantly be reading as much as possible. I know that sounds daunting, but it's true. You know, you need to be familiar with Shakespeare's plays, Arthur Miller, August Wilson, Lynn Nottage, all of these very famous playwrights from back then, and even popular playwrights now today. Read new work, read contemporary work. I would recommend getting an account on the New Play Exchange. It's a new play database where playwrights can upload their scripts, their newly completed works, into this database, and all you have to do is download it, and you have a play to read. So I highly recommend that. I would stay away from monologue books because, you know, reading a block of text that doesn't give you any insight or any context to like what happened before, what's going on with the character, it's not really a good place to start. I would say that they are good for helping find helping find other plays, excuse me. Say if you have a monologue book, you read a monologue, you're like, hey, I liked that. Go find that play. Read the whole play, and if you picked your monologue from it, great. Make sure you know that play backwards and forwards. You know everything that happens to it, especially with the character, which leads me to breaking down your character. Now, I like to follow the Uta Hagen's 6 steps, which are who am I? What are my circumstances? What are my relationships? What do I want? Probably the most important question you'll have to answer. What do I want? What do I do to get what I want? My tactics. And then what's in my way? My obstacles. The more specific you are with yourself in answering these questions, the more detailed, the more layered your monologue will be. It'll really help bring the piece alive, I think. And then next, since I am working with a Shakespeare monologue, we're working with verse here, you have to kind of break this down in a very different way than if you were working on a regular monologue or more contemporary piece. So, I took an acting Shakespeare class at UNT about last year. I think it was about last year. And our professor, she had us break down our text in a very specific way. So first things first, it's written in verse, and it's written in this thing called iambic pentameter. What's that? So an iamb iambs are 2 beats per iamb, and it's a unstressed, and stressed beats, excuse me. That means there's 10 beats per line, 5 IMs per line. And typically, like I said, it's unstressed, stressed. And so you can see it written on here. The little U is the unstressed, and the kind of like dash is the stressed syllable. Now, while you're breaking down your monologue, if you're working with Shakespeare, put your hand over your heart and read your monologue with a heartbeat. Tybalt, here slain, whom Romeo's hand did slay. And it'll help unlock the rhythmic kind of feeling of the monologue. Now, you don't want to perform the monologue like this because you'll sound like a robot. Don't do that. This is just beneficial for helping unlock which words you need to stress. Sometimes you'll find that not all of the IMs follow unstressed, stressed. Sometimes they could be 2 unstressed syllables in a row, or it could be 2 stressed syllables. This all comes with breaking down your monologue and seeing what's in here and what comes alive. It'll help access parts of the monologue. So like if there's a few beats missing, or if there's 3 stressed beats in a row, that could mean something's going on with the character in that moment, especially when you're working with Shakespeare. So I highly recommend doing that. I would say it's imperative if you're working on Shakespeare, because how else are you going to unlock the text? So then what she also would have us do are these 3 kinds of breakdowns. There's the primary, secondary, and tertiary breakdown. So the primary breakdown is a word-by-word substitution, but you keep the text still in the verse structure. So you're not rewriting the monologue, you're just looking what the words are and trying to like replace them with maybe simpler words. So the first line of my monologue is, Tybalt here slain, whom Romeo's hand did slay. My primary breakdown of that is, Tybalt here killed, whom Romeo's hand did kill. It's a simplification, but it's still within that verse structure. Now the second part, your secondary breakdown, you write it in your own words, or rewrite how you would say it, like now. So I wrote, Tybalt started it before Romeo killed him. Again, a simplification, but a more concise way of speaking that verse, iambic pentameter line. The third part, the tertiary breakdown, you're finding the major arguments in the breakdown. And you're kind of splitting up the thoughts into like your setup, your problem, your solution, and your actions. So it's more overarching, and it'll be much more concise than the first 2 breakdowns. Like here's my primary breakdown, it's the whole thing, secondary breakdown, and then my tertiary looks a bit smaller because it's more of a summary and more of a breaking down of your structure almost. So I wrote, Tybalt started the fight. Romeo tried to calm them down. It's very, this happened, this happened, this happened. This is why this happened, you know? At the bottom I put, I am here to speak the truth of my cousin. I will defend his honor. It's kind of the overall target of the monologue. Those are the 3 breakdowns that I like to do. I highly recommend that you do that. Everything I worked on in that Shakespeare class, she had us type all that up and turn it into her, and it really, really helped immensely. Other things that I would recommend are, if you're working on Shakespeare, definitely go through and look up any words that you don't know what they mean. You should do this with any monologue, but with Shakespeare, you'll probably run into that more often, especially because some of those words we may not use today, or some of the words have different meanings today than they did back then. Just Google the word Shakespeare, it'll help you find the original definition. Pay attention to your punctuation, because commas, periods, colons, semicolons can have different meanings and different ways of moving through your piece. Also, if you see like an O, use that. It's a big emotional moment. I didn't have any O's in my monologue, but I recommend just really milking that, like, oh, or finding different ways to use that oh emotional moment. What else? There was one other thing I wanted to hit on. Oh, yes. You'll often get asked as an actor, how do you memorize so many lines so quickly? Well, there is this trick that my Shakespeare professor did teach us. she used to work at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and would have to memorize multiple characters from multiple Shakespeare plays at once. So she taught us this thing called knitwood. That's my monologue rewritten as knitwood. What is knitwood? So the first line of Richard III is, "Now is the winter of our discontent." If you write down the first letter of each word, you get the word knitwood. So basically, write down your monologue, and you can do this with any kind of monologue. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare. Write down the first letter of each word, keep the capitalization if there is any, and make sure to put in all the punctuation, all the commas, all the dashes, all that. So then once you have it written down, if you can see this, it'll kind of look like this. It looks like texting language. I know it seems a bit ridiculous, but it definitely helps memorizing quickly because it trains your brain to know, oh, that's Tybalt here slain, not just T, comma, HS, comma. It seems a little ridiculous, I know, but it helps so much. If you need to memorize large sections of text, use this method. It really helps. That's kind of all I had for y'all today. Those are the things that I like to work on when I'm working on a monologue, especially if I'm working on Shakespeare. But yeah, make sure that you're always, continuing to read plays. I hope everyone's staying safe and staying healthy during this uncertain time in our lives. But yeah, have a great day, y'all. Happy quarantine.